Investigations are underway after a clothing brand set hundreds of fireworks along the Himalayan mountainside in Tibet as part of a publicity stunt, sparking backlash from authorities and online critics. The display, titled Ascending Dragon, is being criticised for disrupting the possibly damaging the fragile ecosystem on the Himalayan plateau, an area considered culturally significant by locals. Let's speak to Sonam Tsering, who is General Secretary of the Tibetan Youth Congress and a Tibetan refugee living in India. Thank you very much for joining us, Sonam. Now, firstly, when you first heard about the stunt and saw the fireworks footage online, what was your initial reaction?
Thank you. So, as a Tibetan, it's disappointing and distressing to see the level of disrespect the artist and the company has shown to the Tibetan people, and it has deeply wounded the sentiment of the Tibetan people for ignoring our cultural values and for turning the sacred sites into an entertainment venue. For Tibetans, we believe the mountains and the hills as sacred sites where the gods and deities live to protect environment and people, and we pay our homage and respect through religious rites and prayer services. And now, secondly, like the Chinese Communist,
Sorry, carry on.
Like the Chinese Communist government that continue to conduct excessive mining activities, uncontrolled damming activities, and the military exercise on Tibetan plateau, that too without consent of the Tibetan people. This artist has disregarded the fragile ecosystem and its significance and its ripple effect in maintaining the global ecosystem balance. So the Tibetan plateau is also known as water tower of Asia, as you know. So any damage on Tibetan plateau will have a negative impact to the downstream countries, particularly to more than 1.4 billion Asian population who depends on the fresh water originating from the Tibetan plateau.
Now, there's been a massive negative public reaction to the stunt, especially around disrespecting the sacred mountains, as you've alluded to. Have you spoken to other locals or Tibetan people about this, and what have they said?
The Tibetans in exile and the environmentalists all around the world, they continue to share their, criticism against the artist. And the two things that we can clearly see out of it is, one is that the Chinese Communist government continue to propagate on the preservation and the promotion of Tibetan culture. But through this action, it has proved that they have lied all these years. If it is true, then they should have stopped the artist from exploiting these fireworks on that too on sacred, sites. And secondly, the Chinese continue to propagate that they are giving equal opportunities to the Tibetan officials in the administration. But this incident has clearly proved that the Tibetan officials are not even in position at the local level decision-making bodies. If there were existence of Tibetans in the official decision-making, then, they will strongly object this kind of activities that have a direct impact on the Tibetan environment and the sacred sites.
Now, Arc'teryx, the brand, have apologised and say they did everything to minimise the impact. They consulted with the local government, used biodegradable materials, relocated locals and animals. Do you think this was enough?
They are responsible for all the environment damage it has caused, and the damage is done already. So I call on the Chinese government, Chinese authorities, who, especially the concerned authorities, to take a decision, a deserving decision against the artist and the company.
Well, in terms of the Chinese officials, they've said that they're investigating the matter now. What are you hoping the outcome will be?
I hope they will take a decisive action because it has directly affected the Tibetan environment, which not only affect the Tibetan plateau and Tibetan people, it has ripple effects to the downstream Asian countries and in maintaining the global ecosystem balance. So the information is off break already, and I hope and I demand a decisive action from the authorities against the artist and the company.
What about in terms of the action the public could make? Because Arc'teryx is supposed to be a conservation-focused brand, and critics are calling for a boycott of its clothing line. And I've seen on TikTok customers cutting up their purchases. How do you think the brand should repair the damage, and what would you say to people who support this brand?
Actually, for a brand, that benefit from mountains moving, then it's pricing for me personally. And their business exists because the mountains exist, and their focus should be on projects that damage the environment, but on projects that protect it. So the public outburst and outcry is reasonable, and therefore I call on the company and artist to come up with projects that can protect the Tibetan plateau, particularly that very site they have damaged. And Tibetan fragile environment, that to very high altitude, the vegetation is very rarely, and the damage, reparation take centuries, So I hope they will come up with a long-lasting solutions or projects that can protect the Tibetan environment.
Sonam Tsering, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.